The following podcast is an RMG Media production.
Okay, get ready to unleash your potential, ignite your business, and connect with trailblazers. The Renaissance Women's Summit is coming back on February 24th in Nashville, Tennessee. Our summit is so much more than just a gathering of successful women. It is a powerful movement that aims to uplift and empower all women entrepreneurs. Our highly anticipated third annual conference is a value-packed one-day event featuring unparalleled networking opportunities, enlightening panels, interactive workshops, and inspiring keynotes led by top-notch entrepreneurs and female leaders. You'll acquire the indispensable knowledge and insights needed to become a true Renaissance woman in the business world. Tickets go on sale on August 1st. You can get them at www.therenaissancewomensummit.com. We'll see you there. Welcome to the Renaissance Podcast, a podcast for Renaissance women
and men
who want to create a modern-day Renaissance in their life and business.
We interview some of the most successful entrepreneurs and share their unique stories.
Are you ready to create your Renaissance? I mean, you are someone that I've followed for years. And I mean, you are always so kind, so lovely, such a ray of sunshine, but you have been through some of the deepest, darkest trenches of anyone I know.
Yeah.
And that's such an admirable thing. And then for you to take it a step further and be like, this is maybe why I'm on this planet, to share all of this shit that I've been through.
Yes. It goes back to like a quote that like I think of all the time, and it's from To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's a part, and I mentioned it in the book, where I talked about how I was in the stage adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird in Monroeville, Alabama, which is Harper Lee's hometown. I had the opportunity to meet Miss Nell, as we called her, once. She was not a very nice lady. She didn't really want to be famous, and she wrote one of the most like inspiring literary works of all time. So like I'd be pissed off too if you're trying to sit down and have breakfast at McDonald's and 20 people are asking for your autograph. I guess I'll figure out what that's like really soon.
After this podcast,
After the podcast. But it's that you can never really truly know what someone's dealing with in their own life unless you crawl inside of their skin and you walk around in it. And oftentimes vulnerability is something that I think everyone struggles with. And so I just decided I had a shift in my life in the last 5 years where I was like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like my life is all rainbows and butterflies and unicorns for the internet. Like it's just Instagram, all of it's a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to break up the highlight reel and say, like, it's like when you're watching a highlight reel of a football game. Not every single play that you see is a touchdown or a great play. Sometimes it's when somebody gets hurt. And there's not enough of us in the influencer industry that are actually honest about it or aren't just trying to exploit a situation that we're going through for financial gain.
Yeah.
And I guess people can make the argument that I'm doing that now because I'm selling a book. But you know what? I felt called to do this. I never really set out to want to write a book. It's one of the most painstaking things that I've ever done.
It's what I always hear. Everyone who's written a book says it's like the hardest thing they've ever done in their entire lives.
Well, especially too when you're writing. I think it's one thing if you're going to sit down and write a fictional story about made up characters.
Right. When
you are writing about your own life and it's a memoir, it's a scary moment to actually sit there with some of your most intrusive thoughts and the things that you think about every day and actually put it on paper. And then it's not just to put it on paper, which makes it real. You're then putting it out into the universe and saying, read this and form an opinion on it. And that was something that, too, early on, my parents got to read the book as soon as it was done. And they were like, are you sure you want to tell people this? And I was like, I don't care. Like, people are always going to have an opinion about me.
Right.
I am somebody that, evicts a strong reaction out of people, good or bad. I don't really care. I tell people all the time, I could be the prettiest peach in the patch. There's always going to be somebody who hates peaches. And that's all right. Yeah. I'm not going to become a pear because you don't like a peach.
I love that.
I don't even like, I'm not going to turn myself into a strawberry because you don't like blueberries.
Right.
Like, I am just going to be me 110%. And part of that is telling you about some of the roughest shit that a person could go through that I've gone through. And it's not all rainbows and like, oh, my life is great. And I've gone to therapy and everything's wonderful. But it's also a moment for me to say, it's okay. I'm fine. I'm okay. And I think that we don't have enough of that in the world today of people saying, I'm okay. I may not be 100% today, but I'm okay. And just to be able to tell my story in a way that allows people to just learn something or gain a new perspective. And it's not just sort of like this really sad and emotional thing to read through. There's really funny stories that I included in there too. And there's stuff that, it's like NSFW. But it was a moment that I think was really great for me because I got to be honest about my truth in my life for one of the very first times and to really tell my life story from literally the time that I came out of the womb until now.
Which is a whole thing to unpack with your childhood upbringing.
Yes.
Adopted.
Adopted at 4 months old.
4 months old.
4 months old. And I wrote it in the book because it's something that I just think happens all the time. This is just, it could happen to a ton of other different scenarios. But specifically with adoption, I wrote in the book, I am so sick of people miracle washing it. Like, I am an adoptee. I'm not somebody that has adopted. Therefore, I don't get to talk about the experience of somebody, a parent that's trying to adopt a child or someone that is trying to, start the beginnings of adoption. But nobody talks about my experience as an adoptee as anything other than you should just be so glad. It's such a blessing. Oh, but it was a miracle, which takes away my experience to be able to say, I grew up with a hell of a lot of abandonment issues. I grew up feeling like half of my body was somewhere else and I didn't know where it was because I don't know where the heck I came from. I know what hospital I was born in, but I don't know anything else. Wow. I know what time I was born at. I don't know anything else. And I'm not legally allowed to know in the state of Alabama until I'm 19. And so nobody else allowed me the opportunity to say, how do you think it made me feel when I had family members that would walk up, cousins of mine, same age, slightly older, some younger, that would say, you're not really a Weaver. You're not blood related. How does a 7 or an 8-year-old learn that unless they hear it from an adult within the family? Which I'm a pretty intuitive person. I've always been. So I'm not going to think a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old is going to come up with that on their own. They heard that from one of my aunts or my uncles, or they heard it from an older cousin. So then not only do I have abandonment issues, but now I feel like I don't belong. Yeah. In addition to other things that are going on in my childhood, but nobody allows adoptees to tell our story from that perspective. And I went into it in the book and I just outlined what I think about the adoption industry. It is it's exploitative at its best. You are preying on young men and women for financial gain. And you're playing chess with children. And oftentimes we don't want to talk about it. And they miracle wash it. Well, it's a miracle. Shut it down. Things can be a miracle and still be messy.
It can be simultaneous.
And it is.
It is.
And, for me, the process of trying to find my biological parents was something that I didn't think I would really ever want to do. I don't know if it was because of I'd done so much work in therapy or if I had just gotten to the point in the pandemic where you have to physically sit in lockdown, me by myself, alone all day with nothing but your thoughts. It's a very dangerous thing, especially someone like me who can spiral it, very quickly. But to sit there and to say okay, I'm going to do this. And then to have it, you have an idea of what it's going to be like. It's not going to, you have to be very smart and set your expectations that these people could be dead. These people could not be alive anymore. They could not want anything to do with you. You may not ever be able to find them. You just don't know. I had to have zero expectations going in. And you find their name and you realize, okay, this person's still alive. You find them on social media. And you start to see, oh my God, I look just like her.
Wow.
And her mother and her father, I look just like her mother, my maternal grandmother. And then you realize that those people died in a car accident 2 months to the day before I was born. Wow. She lost her parents 2 days in a tractor trailer accident, 2 days, 2 months to the day before she had me. And you start to think, oh my God, what did this poor woman go through? She knows that, she's getting ready to give her child up for adoption. And then both her mom and her dad die. And it's you have empathy for this woman. And so I wrote it in the book. I reached out I just sent a letter explaining who I was. I was like, you're probably not going to know who this is. You're getting a huge envelope with all these pictures of some kid that you don't even know. And I'd never expected to hear back just based off of what I saw on her social media and on her family's social media. And I was like, I don't really think she's going to want anything to do with me. And 2 hours, because I'm crazy. So I sent it certified. So that way I would get an email when she signed for it. Because I was like, I'm too type A. I need to know. As soon as this envelope is in this woman's hands, I gotta know.
That's funny.
Otherwise, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna stew all day.
Yeah, you'd wonder.
And I was literally sitting in a ball drinking wine. As soon as I got that, I was like, screw my job today. I literally have to sit here and have a glass of wine right now in the middle of the day. I was sitting on the floor just like, okay, I don't know what to do. But I was like, you know what? She's not gonna reach out to you. And 2 hours later, I had an email from her. And we no longer have a relation. We've never been able to start a relationship. Her family is extremely bigoted and discriminatory. And she basically told me that they are racist and homophobic. And she showed them photos of me and then said that I had sent her a letter and said that, well, he did disclose in the letter that he's gay. And everyone said, well, if he's gay, we want nothing to do with him.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, I was really scared about that with my own family. And it was one of those moments where I was like, it is a miracle I did not grow up in this family.
Right.
And so it's a chance for me to look at like the challenging upbringing that I had, but also look at it could have been so much worse.
Right.
I could have grown up in a trailer in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road with these people as my family. Like, thank God I wasn't.
Yeah.
Thank God I wasn't. And so it does make me appreciative of the life that I had as a child, while also being able to say, there's some messed up stuff I had to deal with.
Right.
Like, who has to go through? And my life was not as challenging as other people's. I knew where my next meal was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to worry about whether or not we had money to keep the lights on. I didn't have to start working at 14 years old to support my family. I was made to work because I had to learn a work ethic, and my parents made me. But that doesn't just, preclude me from having my own struggles and other people to have struggles. I'm like, there were rich families in my hometown, and I'm like, and their kids are some of the most wacko.
I know some literal
Wackadoodle.
crackheads that came from millionaire parents, wealthy, and that's what I think we have a big issue. Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm like some societal expert, but I think a lot of the times people are people like if you're. I don't even know how to say it, but like if you're from a normal family, people make you feel bad for having problems.
Yes.
Like there's no empathy towards people that didn't grow up in the worst circumstances. And like, whatever, to an extent, yeah, I can count my blessings all day long, but also, yeah, everyone has problems. Everyone deals with something.
Yes.
Who are you to say that my problems aren't valid or like my, feelings, whatever it may be, or like I went through shit.
Yeah. Everybody does. And it's just honest to say everybody has their own shit. Some people's I haven't had to deal with something like having cancer or being super sick, but I have had health issues my entire life. I have an autoimmune disease. You wouldn't know it by seeing me, but it's a struggle that I had. But I'm much more fortunate and privileged than other people, but it doesn't preclude me, like you said. That privilege doesn't mean that I'm immune from all harm or struggle or internal conflict. And God knows, being a little gay boy in South Alabama, it was a lot. Gosh. And I had my own issues. I had my own stuff. And I grew up in a very conservative Christian home where men don't show emotion. You don't get to have emotion. And I was an extremely emotional child. Mm-hmm. And I was bullied day in and day out at school. And so it was like being home was my safe place. Then the MySpace days came in. And that started a whole other thing. It's like, then at that point, it was when, and I wrote it in the book, it was when my safe place turned into I'm still at a shooting range with a target on my back. I'm still at home, but somebody can still get on the internet at that point with the rise of social media. And they did. And it's so funny now because most of them are really not doing well in life. And look at me.
Homepage of the hometown paper.
Literally.
That's so great.
Live in a big city, have a very successful career. And I just went back for my 10-year high school reunion this past year. Nothing has changed with these people. Nothing.
Yeah.
a few of them were very nice and were like, hey, I'm sorry that I didn't da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I don't need your apology now.
Yeah.
I don't need anything from you.
How did you cope with it as a kid?
I had a really good family.
That's good.
I was a dancer, so I had a creative outlet that really allowed me a lot of expression. But a lot of it I also didn't deal with.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I write about it in the book about therapy and how I've been in and out of therapy my whole life. My parents would take me to therapists, and some of them were like, well, if you're being bullied for, if you're being called a, expletive, I don't like those words. I'm not one of the gays that will use it and say, well, I can say it. I just think it's remove it from the English language, please.
I agree.
They were like, if they're calling you that, then is there some truth to this? And it's like, well, I don't want you to go and tell my parents if I say something because you don't know who to trust.
Right.
And so I just would always be like, no. So I wasn't going to get anything out of it because I wasn't being honest.
Right.
And so I had been in and out of therapy my whole life. When it was during the lockdowns, and it was August of 2020. And I relapsed in my eating disorder for the first time in 5 years. And I hit the lowest point of my life. And it was an experience that I talked about in the book. I remember sitting there and I just had gotten very drunk after that. And I was just very upset. And I looked over and on my nightstand was a bottle of my prescription sleeping pills. Mm. And then sitting next to it was my phone and my Bible. And I had a choice. And I held that prescription bottle in my hands and I thought, I'm going to do it. Now's the time. And then I looked over and my phone started to ring. And a friend of mine was calling me. And so I set the bottle down and I said, I'm going to need to call you later. And I got up and I called the suicide prevention line that night. And had I not, I wouldn't have been able to be sitting here with all of you. But that was the day where I went home the next day and I looked at my parents and I was like, this happened and I need help. And since then, I have been in therapy once a week, every single week, with the exception of sometimes, I need my therapist 2 times a week. Depends on the week, depends on what's going on in my life. After my most recent breakup, I called her on a Sunday and was like, we need to have a session tomorrow morning. And she was like, I'm on vacation. And I was like, hire a babysitter for an hour. I don't know what to tell you. But it's what we're going to have to happen. Yep. But as I started to really invest into therapy, one of the things that I started to realize is that there were just periods of time in my life that were extremely traumatic that I had completely blocked out. Can you imagine looking back at your childhood and realizing I blocked 5 years of my childhood out and you don't remember a single thing from it? Mm-mm. And it's so crazy the way that our minds work.
Deep trauma, though. Deep
trauma. And I was given a book by my therapist, and it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about trauma response within our brain. And a lot of it is it really is like a book for somebody that's in, a psychology major or something. And so a lot of it is a little right over my head. I'm not nearly as smart as I pretend that I am. I do not know a lot of big words, but I can write a book.
Yes, you can.
But it really started to open my eyes to the fact that there's a lot of internal trauma that you have no idea about. A lot of it stemmed from being a survivor of sexual violence, which I'm happy to talk about if you have any questions. But there were periods in my childhood that were completely blocked out. And so I started to do different therapy techniques with my therapist. And one of them was I would go in and we would do EDMR therapy, which is like a light therapy. And it just really helps allow you to get back to a traumatic moment and to focus in on that without feeling unsafe. It was actually what Dorit Kemsley did on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills on camera after her house was broken into. So if you see her holding these little things and you're watching 2 lights and you're clicking remotes, it's to help you. And during that, it really allowed me to get over the trauma that I'd really internalized and I didn't realize I internalized from becoming a survivor of sexual violence, and getting over that experience. And so that was one of the things that really helped me, was to be able to revisit that actual moment and to remember every last detail, and to then be able to sit down and say, okay, things from my childhood are starting to pop up that I had forgotten about, or that I'm like, where did that? I don't even remember. How did I not remember that?
Right.
Though? And it's crazy because your mind's like a storage cabinet, and there's all these different files back there in the back. And so I just told my therapist one day, I was like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. And she said, write it in a journal. Because it was very hard for me to sit down and talk about this. And then my therapist is like one of my best friends, that I pay her to be my best friend. She said, that's what it should feel like.
Yeah.
I'm paying you to be my best friend and to listen. It's the best thing that I've ever invested in.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that.
Yeah. And so she was like, just start writing some of this stuff down. And so I filled up a whole, I went to Target that day, like a type A OCD person would, sat down with, colored pens.
I was about to say,
it's
pretty.
color-coded. It was pretty and everything. And I mean, it's like you're writing the most traumatic story of your life about being, sexually assaulted, and you're worried about what color pen you're writing it in. But it's like, it helped me get it out. And I filled up this college-ruled notebook literally in like a matter of weeks.
Wow.
Of just the craziest shit. And some of it made it in the book, some of it didn't.
Wow.
And I looked at my therapist and I go, why is only this negative shit coming up? Like, where's the good stuff? Like, my life wasn't that bad. Like, sure, I've been through hell and back, but like, where's the good stuff? And she goes, why don't you just sit down, write something that you do remember, and see what else starts to come back. Revisit that good, happy time, that good, happy moment, and see what else comes back. Truth be told, I had completely forgotten about being on Air Force One. I was in 5th grade.
You used
you would think. I literally used President George W. Bush's personal bathroom because I could not wait to make it to the commoner part of the plane. I literally was in the nose of Air Force One where the beds are. Like I will literally never live this down, but I'm going to say it on this podcast. I would literally looked at his toothbrush sitting there. It says President of the United States etched in with a little presidential seal on it. I picked it up and I was like, put it in your pocket and walk away. Put it in your pocket and walk away. And then I was like, what if the Secret Service comes after me?
That'd be so funny.
And so I was like, don't take it. Don't take it. I was this close to stealing President Bush's toothbrush that he had clearly used that morning. But also, what am I going to do? Use President George W. Bush's toothbrush on my teeth? No, like it's sick. But it's like,
it's one of those things you'd hold on to and have it.
Yeah,
and no one would believe you. You'd be like,
but it's also such a fun, these stupid icebreaker games where people are like, tell us an interesting fact about yourself. It's like,
well,
I took a shit on Air Force One and President George W. Bush's bathroom.
Oh, man.
And people are like, what? And you're like, yeah, I missed my first day of middle school. I got to miss my first day of middle school because this is going to be such an educational moment.
Right.
My mother was a teacher. She was like, he'll learn more on this trip than he would sitting in classes all day.
Well,
just like, I mean, true. I did learn a lot about how the plane works. And I'm sure watch me get a cease and desist about the book or remove this from the Secret Service. But
you were so funny.
It was one of those experiences I didn't remember.
Wow.
It's like, what a cool moment.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And it's not like I didn't know what happened. It's just I don't remember really being there. I didn't remember how the plane felt and all this stuff. And then it's now come back. And if you think I'm crazy, you should have seen my mother sitting in George W. Bush's desk chair in his office. She's rubbing her back into it. She's caressing his flight coat. And I was like, Mom, your husband is right here. Also, the first lady probably sleeps in the other twin bed across from him. So you need to calm down. This is embarrassing, okay? This is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen my mother do. Her hair, the static on her hair was so crazy because she just shuffled her feet on the carpet. She was not picking her feet up.
That's so funny.
But one of the craziest things I do remember on that is that they told us was if there is a speck of dirt that gets on any of the carpet in the plane, they rip every single piece of carpet up and recarpet it.
Wow.
Why?
He's the president. You can't have an ink spot or a spaghetti, a little drop of spaghetti sauce on Air Force One.
Oh, they got taxpayer money for that.
I was about to say.
That's true. We're paying
I'm like, yeah, I'd like for them to pay for new carpet in my apartment,
Yeah, right.
I need
Can the
that
government
kind of
pay for that? Maybe pay for the down payment on a house for me because in Nashville, it's a little too expensive right now for me to buy.
It's a little painful here.
I know.
So with that practice, I'm really interested in that. She said, dump everything.
Dump it all.
Into these pages.
Yep.
And how did that help you? I want to know about that.
Yeah, for me, I think as much as I love to talk and as much of a people person as I am, sometimes when you're dealing with really messed up stuff, how am I going to sit down and tell somebody every graphic detail, about being raped. It's hard.
Yeah.
And it's also like you don't want to trigger somebody else, And so it's like, I don't know if you want to hear every single detail and like, are you judging me? Are you going to sit here and say, well, like, why didn't you get up and run at this point? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Because it was one of the most traumatic moments that I've ever been through. It's the most horrific thing that's ever happened to me. And like, I would go through the March 2020 tornado 500,000 times over again.
Which you lost everything in that.
Literally outside of my closet, my dog and my cat and my bed frame. I had to get an all-new mattress, lost like everything in it. I would rather go through that 500,000 times than to ever go through the experience of being sexually assaulted. It is hands down the most horrific thing that happens to a human being. And sadly, 1 in 3 women in America and 1 in 6 men in America will experience it in their lifetime. Wow. It happens every 68 seconds in America.
God.
But yet we are so concerned with the bullshit on TikTok. We are so concerned about what this celebrity said 15 years ago. Why aren't we concerned with the fact that this is literally happening every single minute of every single day in America?
Yeah, or even like Tennessee being it's like in a battle between Tennessee and California for the top sex trafficking in the country.
Because we're right on the I-40 corridor. We're right there where 6 different main roads go through, main interstates go through. I mean, Atlanta used to be the worst place, and now Nashville is even higher than Atlanta. It's scary. It's terrifying.
It is really terrifying.
But it's like, how am I going to sit down and like tell somebody about that? Because I remember friends of mine coming to me and telling me when it happened to them, and before it happened to me, and I just remember like I had judgment in them. Like I had a sense of a judgment towards them. Not that I felt it was ever their fault, because it's not. But also, like, why didn't you do, like, I don't know about y'all, but I've watched every single episode of Law & Order SVU. I've seen every CSI show known to man, okay? I always said I would know what to do. Here is what I would do. The simple fact is you don't know what you do until it happens to you. Because I thought I did until it actually happened. And you would literally go into survival mode. But it's like, how am I supposed to talk about that? And I wasn't completely comfortable with talking about it yet because I've still had so much shame over something that is a crime committed against me. I didn't commit the crime. It was committed against my body, though. And so there's a sense of shame there that really made it difficult to talk about. And so for me, what I figured out with my therapist was that writing it out was a way for me then to just be able to read it back to her. And I didn't have to like worry about anything other than reading something back to her. But it is what I thought. It is exactly what happened. And so for me, writing has always been cathartic, and it's always been sort of a good tool for me. I was that kid in college that could bust out a term paper in 2 days. I love to write. It's one of those things. God just really gave me the ability to write really well. And I'm also the son of a school teacher. So she really, pushed grammar, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. She really went through my book with a fine tooth comb. And
I was about to say, what was the editing process like?
It was honestly, it was harder than writing the book because you have to sit and look at your own life and say, what do you want people to read and what do you not? And then you're editing out moments of your life and periods of your life. The book is about 178 pages, give or take. And it's 23 chapters. When I finished writing the book, it was 438 pages, and it was 37
you cut
chapters.
Out a good bit.
Yes. Both just because I was like, I don't want people to have to read a 400-page book.
Yeah.
But also because I was like, some of these stories are a little redundant. Some of them sort of tie into each other, but like we don't need a circular moment. We just need this thing. But sitting down and editing that was really difficult. And then my parents were like, there's not a lot of happy in here. And I was like, well, shit. I mean, maybe because there wasn't a lot of happy back then. And so it was a moment for me to also go back and revisit and say, like, okay, I'm going to pull this story back in. One of those was the presidential potty that I had to throw back in there. And then I also just I took out a few stories that were like they didn't really portray me in the best light in terms of like. I was a very promiscuous person in college, and especially coming out of it, it was more of like and I say in the book, I was really just chasing after a sexual experience that would erase my sexual assault. And so...
Wow, that's kind of like a huge light bulb moment.
When I said that in therapy, I literally remember looking at my therapist and I go, holy shit.
That's what I did. That's why I did that.
And then she was like, ta-da. And I was like,
clarity.
I was like, have you thought that this whole time? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? And she was like, you had to come to that on your own.
It's stronger when you actually do come to it on your own.
And it was a realization that like I remember having, and I was like, no wonder I was a whore. Like, damn, I didn't care about those little closeted frat boys. I was just chasing after this experience that I wanted to erase.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not because you have fun in a fraternity basement. Gross. Like,
I mean, you think that you do.
Me, Patrick Weaver.
I mean, you know,
I mean, and it's also one of those things too. I still felt a lot of shame from my assault. And so I was fine being somebody's best kept secret because I had a best kept secret too.
Mm-hmm. And you would rather be.
And I'd rather just nobody know.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it took me 5 years before I even told anybody that I had been assaulted. And it was not until 2 years ago that I told my family. And so they were like, well, you've alluded to stuff like that on social media and we just didn't want to ask questions. And I was like, well, good.
Wow.
It was like, if I wanted you to know, I'd have come and told you. But it was one of those things, especially we've seen in like the Time's Up, Me Too era, so many people come forward with their stories and their experiences. When's the last time you saw a man as a part of that movement that wasn't a perpetrator?
Right.
Maybe the kid with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
That all went away.
Yeah,
Men are not
if it does get brought up, it gets immediately swept under, like that happened with Brendan Fraser. What's his name, right? Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happened with him. He got like kind of blacklisted from Hollywood after coming forward with this story.
Yeah.
Which is
and it's one of those things
so
where
sad. It's
men
disgusting.
are not allowed a seat at the table. And I'm sorry, Shirley Chisholm said it best. You don't have a seat at the table for me? Fine. I'll bring my own. And so that's a lot of what this book is. Like, I wasn't afforded a lot of the opportunities to sit at these tables. So I brought my folding chair. I have my bottle of water. I'm going to sit here and you're going to listen. And if you may not want to give me a seat at the table, but I brought my own. So, but yeah.
So,
a lot.
So I love the title of the book.
Yeah.
Southern Fried Sass.
Southern Fried Sass.
I don't think there's a better title for Patrick Weaver.
No,
it
is so me and
to the core.
I love original shit.
I love it.
Oh, hi, puppy dog. I love when there's like original stuff. And so I scoured the internet and I was like, is there a book
called
Southern Fried Sass that is like a memoir? No. I launched my book. A week later on Amazon, a drag queen comes out with her memoir, Southern Fried Sass.
Oh.
And I was
what are
like,
the odds?
I was like, this bitch had the audacity to steal my name.
I was like, excuse me. In some way.
I was like, okay, well now I'm like, and so of course I go and I'm like, can I get it copyrighted? What can I do? It's copyrighted by her. I was like, texted my attorney and I was like, I told you we should have copyrighted this 6 months ago.
But I love how I became the most fabulous version of myself.
Yeah.
How did that come to be? Like, at what point writing the book?
I think that a lot of it had to do with, as I sort of like looked back on the book and I sort of sat there and I was like, what is this massive thing and why am I doing this? The one message that I wanted to reign supreme among everything else is everybody goes through shit that's good and bad in life. And you better buckle up if you think life is going to be anything like a fairy tale, because it's not. It's this whole fairy tale mentality that we like to teach children is just a crock of bullshit.
Yeah, it's setting them up for failure.
It's setting people up for failure. I'm sorry, you're not going to meet your husband like that. Your life is not going to be like The Princess and the Frog. I'm sorry, it's all bullshit. It's all show and no go when people say this stuff. I wanted people to be able to look back on their own lives and say, I also had really good stuff, but I also had some really, really low valleys. And to be honest about it. Because if we sit here and we pretend like life is just rainbows and unicorns and we're tiptoeing through the tulips, like, it's just stupid. Like, there's no substance to that. Yeah. It's just it's a crock of
What do you do with it?
What do you do? Like, what do I do with, if I were to get on here and be like, my life was great.
This would be the worst interview
It would be
ever.
like the worst interview.
So bored.
But it's also like your life is not interesting because you've been successful. Your life is not interesting because you have a multi-million-dollar company. Your life is not interesting because you have a husband and you're married and you have kids. And of course, all of that is addition to, but like, where's the meat and potatoes?
Yeah,
Stop giving me the gravy without the meat and potatoes.
Amen.
I'm tired of it's all frosting, there's no cake. And like, I need a little, you can't just sit there and eat a whole tub of frosting. I mean, I can't, some people probably could. I'm lactose intolerant too. So, and I also don't like cake. I don't like ice cream. I don't like any of it.
I don't either.
I'm not a desserts girl.
Chip.
Never been a desserts kind of girl.
We were just talking about that last night. No,
savory. Give me savory. Give me appetizers.
Cheese board.
Give me a cheese board. Give me queso.
Oh
yeah.
Give me queso, and I will
Chewy's cracked dip. The white stuff they put.
So good.
Chewy, so
okay,
so good.
It's fire. That's what I'm having for dinner now. So thank you for that. But people have got to realize that like it's okay to have gone through things, and it's okay to not be over it.
Yeah,
it's okay to sit there and say I'm still dealing with this, but there has to be a plan of action to move forward. And so, as far as like becoming the best version, I am the most fabulous version of myself because today is all I'm granted. I'm not allowed tomorrow per se, so why don't I just for today be the most fabulous version of myself? And that includes having some baggage, being in therapy, having a little bit of emotional shit you got to work through, but also having an appreciation for the life that I've built and understanding that in order for me to continue moving forward, I have to work really hard and I have to put in the work emotionally and mentally and physically for me to still be the most fabulous version of myself. I don't need to be anybody else. I don't have the desire to be a carbon copy of my favorite celebrity or to be one of those people who just tries to copy what their favorite influencer is doing. It's never been me. I've always sort of paved my own way and sort of charted, beat to my own drum per se. And I've just done it really fabulously and it's been 100% authentic. And so that's how I became the most fabulous version of myself was all of those things that are in that book, even the darkest trenches of my life, have allowed me to be the confident person that I am today, have allowed me to sit here and say, like, you're probably going to go through some shit, but look at what I've been through. If I can get through that, you can get through what you're dealing with. And know that, like, you're going to have people around you that are going to cheer you on. And if you don't, then I am. I want you to be happy and successful, and I want you to feel fabulous. And, I don't need to have a six-pack and have, tons of Instagram followers and be like, and the hottest man on Instagram in order to feel fucking fabulous. Like, look at me. I'm amazing.
And a lot of those people that maybe do look that way are super miserable. I'm not saying
they are. Most of the time they are.
And oh gosh, I would rather be a little rough on the edges. I'd rather be a little
I'd rather,
quirky
have a
and
I'd rather have a little
stained
exactly.
teeth, like just be you.
Just be yourself.
And you're going to attract the right people if you are, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about attracting what's good for us and what serves us and what, that energy. And when you're fully you, the people that are meant for you are going to be like, I am attracted to her. I'm attracted to him because they're just being them. And I love that.
That was a really hard lesson for me to learn too, especially when I first moved to Nashville. I had a group of girlfriends and I just felt like I had to be 20 different versions of myself. And
exhausting.
It was exhausting. And I was like that a lot of my life. And looking back on it now, I changed my personality dependent upon who I was around.
Yeah.
Now you know what you're going to get when you meet Patrick Weaver and you're around me. You get what you get. If you don't like it, you don't get upset because you're not going to have any sort of false pretense that I'm somebody that I'm not. I'm a little crude. I'm a little crass. I am very direct and honest, but I'm also very nice and I'm very approachable. And, that's just who I am. I'm equal parts bitch and sweetheart. And that's just how I'm designed. I don't know any other way to be. But trying to figure out who the hell am I and what is my purpose on this earth at all, I couldn't do that. And I slowly started to see that the more that I tuned into who I was and other things started to happen for me. And I started, to be more widely known as, and I started to have friends who were influencers or had been on reality TV shows. This group of girls couldn't stand it. Mm. They could not stand it. And it was like, you're fake now. And I was like, actually, I'm the truest version of myself that I've ever been. You just don't like that.
That makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I'm living my life, my best life, and I'm confident in that.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, but that probably shows that you're insecure.
100%.
Because you can't handle me being this person.
Yep. And I think too, like they'd lived here for a while. They had their own careers. They had their nice apartments. I had just moved to Nashville. I was working at Katie Hallmark's. I had a floral pull-out couch. That was the ugliest couch I've ever seen. It came from my grandmother. And I'm like, thank you so much for the couch. I'm like, which camera do I look in? Thank you for the couch.
Thank you.
Thank you for the couch. But it was like the ugliest thing. You know, like I didn't have nice stuff. I was making $25,000 a year.
Right.
I was making no money.
Slinging papery.
Slinging stuff at the papery and like doing
Listening
these wedding
gossip.
Taking $4,000 wedding invitation, orders with like the most fancy, like the biggest diamond rings I've ever seen in Belmead coming through there. And I'm like, my, what the hell am I doing?
The bells of Belmead.
It's one of those things. A family member of mine, I did an Instagram live to talk about the book after I had made the announcement. And she's like, when are you going to write a sequel? And I was like, whoa. Well, hold up, Aunt Tammy. Hold up.
Tam,
I was like,
sister.
I just finished a book.
Yeah.
Give me like a year to just sort of sit. And it's like the work is over. Now's the fun part, getting to do interviews like this and sit down and talk about the book, getting to sit down and talk about life and getting to see other people. I mean, I ugly cried at 6:45 this morning when I saw one of my best friends from California. We went into college together and she was reading the book in bed last night. Oh. And it's like, I'm going to get emotional now. To see people appreciate something that was so hard to do has been the most enjoyable experience of all of this, because I could not imagine if I was like sitting here and I was like that poor man that was sitting on TikTok and he was sitting in the bookstore and nobody was buying his books. And I'm also like, can y'all make my book blow up on TikTok, please? But I'm like, I couldn't imagine like sitting there and like people not reading it and like getting messages from like my 7th grade English teacher. Like, I don't talk to her anymore. I haven't seen that woman in 15 years. But like for her to reach out and say like, it's such an impactful story and that like, she's deeply sorry that she didn't speak up more. Or getting, people calling my parents and saying, I've always been really impressed with Patrick, but this book was incredible.
Mm.
Wow.
And it's like, there's some shit in that book that like, I didn't necessarily want my grandmother to read. Like, I don't think my grandmother needed to read about me being a slut in a fraternity house. She has now. And I've already heard about that.
Man.
Yeah. But it's like, yes, now's the fun part is getting to just see the fruits of all that labor and getting to see how people react to the story. I've already had a couple of little haters. That's all right.
When you put yourself out there,
what's been the hate you mind talking about?
Listen, I get hate.
I'm curious because I feel like it's going to be funny as shit.
I get hate all the time. I tell people but I say this and watch me say this, and literally I'm going to eat my words. I'm uncancelable. Because everything about me is I've already thrown it out to the internet.
Right, that's
the good,
true,
the bad, the ugly. Like
you've already talked about it.
I've already talked about it. Like, have I said some racist stuff in the past? Absolutely. Do I own it now? Absolutely. Have it changed? 100%. Have I said some homophobic stuff back in the day when I was extremely closeted and I was rude? Yes. I went to Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day, for God's sake. But I'm uncancelable. It's something to brag about. It's not anything to brag about because, like, I'm sure there's still something that could screw me over. But I, every day, get messages to people, go kill yourself.
Ugh.
Why don't you do the world a favor and disappear? Stupid. I mean, the word that they love the most is FAGGOT.
That's
and
terrible.
Like, I'm like, can we come up with something original? I've been called this since 6th grade.
It's always like the most, like, it's the
dumbest
people
word.
It's the word. I just hate the word. I hate the way it sounds. I hate the way it's written.
Even when you say it does not taste good in your mouth.
It feels dirty.
It feels dirty when you say it.
It is dirty. It's the worst word ever. And I just.
But if I sat around and worried about whether or not I was going to get a hate message, I'd never leave my house.
Right.
If I cared about
it's
what
never
people thought.
real. It's always such bullshit. It's always like a fake account, no person. It's always some nonsense. I will tell you the funniest
story. I get a DM into my request, and it's literally the Instagram handle is I hate Patrick effing Weaver.
Really?
And I was like, so you had the time to
make
it. But I was also like, can an Instagram name be that long? I was like, how many characters is this?
Feels like
Instagram for this one.
Feels like I couldn't even get Renaissance Marketing Group, so it doesn't even feel like
I was like, it was a little long to me. And I was like, you had time in your day.
Oh my gosh.
Because you're this obsessed with me to go and to make an account profile on this. Well, I'm crazy. So I go to the internet. I'm like, how to find out, I found this person's phone number in like an hour.
Oh, that's funny.
You're like,
here's the best
detective.
thing. This woman, grown woman.
Woman. Oh, woman.
Grown woman.
I don't know why I was picturing
She
a
has
guy.
2 children. One of them, her daughter took dance from me.
Wow.
Sent me a message saying, you should do the world a favor, kill yourself. Then another one that said, nobody lights FAGS. Sent another one that was like something to do with like Trump. And I was like, I'm not even talking about anything political on my Instagram right now. Like, honey, we're fine. Like, I'm not.
God, that's
You're
insane.
hating me for
But
literally existing.
It's also funny to me when people swipe up and they're like trying to send my story to someone else, but they actually send what they want to say to me.
Oh, that's my
that's
favorite.
And I'm like,
my favorite.
you are so incompetent at being a troll that you can't even do it right.
You're a horrible troll. Be a better troll.
Get a hobby.
Yeah.
This is what I would like to say to these people. Get a hobby. Like,
Do
I have a
something.
hobby. My hobby is being fabulous and living my life. I love to watch The Real Housewives. I can't tell you how many times I've watched The Real Housewives. Every flippin' franchise, I'll rewatch it till the day that I die. I read books all the time. I have a wonderful dog. I have a cat. I have a life. I have friends. I have family. I don't have time in my day to troll somebody on the internet.
It's the most miserable people that do that.
These keyboard warriors that get behind, and I'm like, you are literally, and sometimes when they send it to me, instead of like sending it to someone else and they're saying it about me, I'm like, we went to high school together and you never said a word to me in high school. Like,
why am I bothering you so much?
But that's also, it gives me so much flippin' power, and to feel that like
to know
my
that you don't
existence
care.
bothers you that much means that I have a lot of frickin' power in my in who I am.
That's the truth.
And I am intimidating to you. And that's not on me. That's your prostitute.
Yeah.
It's your
Their like
your
happiness
problem.
is making them so insecure that they feel compelled to say something that tells you everything that you need to know.
It's also like when does somebody's happiness or joy diminish your own?
Right.
Like, that's not how that works. So it's also like somebody else getting help on something doesn't mean that you're not going to get help too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this whole push and pull. And I'm like, both things can be in existence at the same time. Like, I can be really happy and really confident in life. You may not be, but I'm not making you miserable. You're just choosing to put your misery onto somebody else when you really need to be looking inward, figuring out, why are you miserable? What's going on here? But that's also why, like, I really need to run for president, just so that way I can just be like, you know what? Everybody is going to be forced to go to therapy.
Yeah, I always thought that should be a mandate. Like, everyone needs to go to therapy.
Everyone should be required to go to therapy, and it should be free. And then you should also have to work for 2 years in hospitality
100%.
and be a server.
100%.
The world would be
Preach.
Prerequisite to living.
The prerequisite before you can really even get
a driver's license.
Before you can get into college, because everybody would be a hell of a lot nicer.
Yep.
B, we wouldn't have all this violence and war and shit if everybody would just go to therapy and talk about it. It's like, if everybody would actually be honest and emotionally intelligent, we wouldn't really have people getting shot up in the streets all the time. People that mental illness would plummet, and we wouldn't see all the, I could go on and on.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody needs to serve in a restaurant, because it's the most humbling thing that you'll ever do.
100%.
I put myself through college doing it, and I still to this day cannot understand how some people can be so rude to waiters and
so
wait staff.
insane.
It is
and it's because they've never worked in a restaurant.
It's exactly.
That's 100%.
Exactly. It is. Wow. Have I told you the craziest story that happened to me? I worked at this restaurant called Southern Ale House in Tuscaloosa. And it's the best restaurant in Tuscaloosa that you could ever go to. If you ever find yourself in Tuscaloosa, you go in there and you tell the owners that Patrick Weaver sent you. They're the most wonderful family that owns it. But I go in, and I had so many regulars, because I was a damn good server. Like, I was so good at my job.
You're probably hilarious.
And I loved it, because I like the old women loved me. Their husbands, I would get them drunk. I had so many regulars, and I had one group. I had this couple that would come in. They'd come in 2 or 3 times a week. They would always request me, and I loved them. And I actually wrote about it in the book. And one day they were like, our son's coming in. And they had always talked about their son. And they were like, he lives in Birmingham. He graduated, 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, okay, yeah. And they were like, we're still, we're ready for grandchildren, just doing the typical thing that like Southern parents would tell everybody else, instead of like telling their son, like, it's time to settle down and get married. Like, we want grandchildren. I'm like, I don't know why you tell me this, but you feel close enough to do it.
Yeah.
So they were like, he's coming into town. He's had a meeting here. And I was like, okay, great. And I walked back over. It's a guy that I dated my freshman year of college secretly.
Oh my God.
And
waiting on this grandkid.
And I was like, and of course I have never seen somebody's like the blood drain from somebody's face physically.
That's so funny.
I'd never seen it happen to anybody. He went from like normal skin tone, sheet white.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna have fun with this one. I had found out that he had given me a fake name for the 6 months that we were like dating and hanging out.
Wow.
6 months. He told me his name was Steven. His name was not Steven. Told me his other name, which I gave him a fake name in the book. Told me his name was Steven. His name was definitely not Steven. I found out because at that time, Facebook rolled out the people you may know, and his profile
great.
popped up, and I was like, oh, so your name doesn't even begin with an S.
Man.
And so, his mom was like,
Do you know each other?
do you know each other? And I was like, you look really familiar. And he was like, no, I don't think we know each other. And I was like, really? You look like this guy I used to know named Steven. And I read, it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, you're going to get so uncomfortable. And guess what? It's fine because I'm not the one with the secret. And I was like, I really wanted to just look at the parents and be like, it's going to be a long time before you get those grandbabies because this is not how
It's
not
how that you think
it's
that's
not going to go down the way you think it is.
no. Yeah.
So, and that was
That's
alleged.
really
I
good.
literally hadn't seen him in 4 years until
my
that
God.
moment. But it was one of those times where I was like, and of course, you know me, I ran back with my big mouth and told everybody back in the kitchen, like pull my manager aside. And I was like, let me just tell you what just happened.
Oh, those are
and
the
he
best
was like,
moments.
wait, them? And he was like, I know them. I've known them. I know the family. I know their parents. And I was like, wow.
Oh.
Well, now you know. It's like one of those moments.
so
It's like,
good.
thanks for watching.
Oh
Period. I
my
was
God.
like, they tipped me really well. So
That's good.
yeah, I was like, he probably will never go to that restaurant again for the rest of his life.
No.
But that's the best
He's
thing.
probably traumatized, but you know what? Serves him
Restaurant
right.
staff.
Yeah, I was like,
that's it. The people in the restaurants know everything about you.
oh my
Stuff
God.
Like order, you got to be
Yeah.
careful. Don't like
No.
control of a lot.
Yeah, they're in control of what you're going to put in your mouth. Like,
Yeah.
woo.
That's
I mean,
great.
and I will say this confidently. After serving and working in a restaurant for 3 years, the worst demographic of tippers, white men over the age of 60. Stingy, rude, entitled. I got a tip. I had this table come in one time and it was all of these men in camo, like they had gone hunting. And I was like, this is not my target demographic of a table.
Yeah.
But
Here we
I need
go.
money. It's a Friday night. I got to make some money, So I go over and I give them outstanding service. Like I gave to everyone. If I messed up, I'd own it to their face and say, I made a mistake. I never blame. Sometimes I blame it on the kitchen.
You were one of those people.
I was one of those people
Oh my
sometimes. I'm like,
gosh.
the kitchen screwed that up. I'm so sorry. But other times I was just honest. Like, why am I going to sit here and lie? Let me tell you the truth. I fucked up. But I gave this group of men the most outstanding service ever. They left me a tip on $127. I'll never forget it. They left me $1.50 in quarters
Wow.
on the table with a note that said, we don't want you as a server next time.
Damn. That's
and I
awful.
Went back and I was standing in the cooler sobbing, like our walk-in cooler, because I was like, I know what they meant by that. They didn't want a gay guy waiting on them. And I happened to bump into, when I was walking back there crying, the restaurant, the restaurant owner's father. And he was like, what's going on? And I just handed him the check and let him look at it. And he goes, did they not leave you anything? And I held up the coins and I was sobbing. And he goes, give me those. And he took them and he walked me outside of the restaurant into the parking lot. He walked up to the guy, threw the coins in his face and said, don't you ever come back in my son's restaurant ever again. And he walked me back inside and he walked over and he pulled out his wallet and he handed me a $100 bill and he said, you're done. Go home.
Wow.
It's like the coolest story.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst, but the coolest story.
But people that work in a restaurant, they're good people.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and if you work in a restaurant, you know what it's like when they leave.
Yeah.
And what do? You go and you pick up see what the tip is. That's what you're working for tips. If you know anything.
Literally the only thing.
The only thing you can make.
If you can't afford to tip, don't go out to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so dumb, too. $127, and you're all
minimum. Give me $20 on that.
Come on. It's not going to break your bank.
Yeah, it's like you're ordering high-end burger. Like this is we're not at Hooters,
right?
Okay, this is an upscale Southern pub. This is not, Wingstop. Not knocking any of these places, but this is more upscale place.
Yeah.
You're obviously you have money. You can money. Pay for it.
You had enough money to go hunting with 6 of you guys, and clearly
that's not a cheap sport. That's a very expensive thing.
It's a very expensive thing.
Yeah.
I grew up around. I'm not really the hunting type. Go figure.
Shocking.
I can't really be quiet long enough to do you hunt?
No.
I'm not really into it. I'll go to the shooting range with my dad just
do
to practice.
The shooting range, but
I don't really like to kill animals. I'm also a vegetarian, and I was a full blown vegan for 2.5 years.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's the best I've ever felt in my life. The healthiest I've ever felt in my life. It was insane.
Good for you.
But it's one of those moments. Hunting's not for me.
Yeah.
You have to get up super early and you have to be quiet.
Kind of for no reason.
Then you have to sit out in the woods in the dark, and that just seems like a horror movie. And I know that if their life was a horror movie, I'm going out first. I'm going to be the first one. I don't know. Do you think about that ever?
I do think about that.
Where would I be?
I'll stay in Airbnbs, and I'm like, this is how a horror movie starts.
Yeah.
This is it. It's an Airbnb murder scene.
I think about that when I'm at a hotel alone in New York, and I'm like, I'm going to be a part of I really am not in the mood for me to be, the next Dateline story, but I'm going to be.
But then you think about it, in that scenario, if you're staying in an Airbnb or something, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get this. I'm in the horror movie. I should be smart and leave. And you're like, well, no, I'm going to be the character that gets killed while they're walking to their car to leave. Either way, I'm dying, so I may as well be comfortable.
These are the intrusive thoughts that keep me up at night.
I'm there with you. Yeah.
That and I'm just such a true crime junkie at heart that this is actually one of the stories that I cut out of the book was my addiction to true crime and how that caused me a lot of anxiety. And it was something my therapist and I specifically had to say, you cannot watch this until you develop some techniques and practices around managing your anxiety, because I would watch something and I'd be like, that's going to happen to me. I am going to be the next abducted, like a little girl. And it's you're kind of aged out of being sex trafficked. You're a little old. You're not really their age demographic anymore, Patrick, which is not nice to say. It's not nice, but it's the truth. I'm not in my prime anymore for sex traffickers. But it's also one of those things where it's the odds of that happening are very slim to none for men, period. But also it's why are you sitting around thinking about this? And it's because it was something else to think about instead of why am I anxious in life? Oh, because I have no sense of self. And so you get addicted to things like true crime.
Yeah.
It makes you feel. But I still now, to this day, I am still addicted to it. And I cannot tell you how many hours at night I would stay awake watching TikToks on the Idaho murders. And everything else.
Oh, yeah, that was wild.
I am so fully invested. And I'm like, thank God I work from home, because how else would I be in an office and I have a trial to watch?
I have stuff to do.
I have a job to do.
Our team came in and did.
But I literally have to watch this. It's I couldn't shut off the stupid Johnny Depp trial.
Yeah.
It's why was I don't even care about it. So I don't even care about her. I think she's ugly, and I think he's ugly, and I hate everything about this, and I think it's stupid.
Right.
This is rich people problems.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
I want to talk about where the heck is John Benet Ramsey's killer? These are the answers that I need to know. Where's the investigative journaling on all of this? Where is the court, TV? I paid for court TV.
Oh my gosh.
I paid for the package so I could have court TV so I could watch all this stuff happen.
Love it. So much.
Who else does this besides me? Addicted to true crime. And it's part of my life could have been a true crime documentary. So,
well,
but
there might be something there with you. And
there could be some connection there.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm so addicted to it.
I like it.
I think it's because I grew up in a town where nothing like that ever happened.
Right. But those are always the towns where there's something that happened.
Honestly,
It'll come
trust
up.
me, there's probably like a serial killer that lived down the street from me. Who knows?
And there'll be,
and I'll be like,
now,
oh my God, Mr. Smith that lived on the road?
And they'll bring you into the documentary and you'll be like, I never knew.
Literally allow me to do it. I'm obsessed with Payne Lindsay, who's
I love Payne Lindsay. Did you listen to the one?
I haven't listened to the
Tara, the OG.
Yes, the Tara Grinstead. Yep. Was that not the wildest shit?
So well done.
And when I also am like driving down the road and I'm like, oh my God, I get a CNN notification that these people had been arrested. And I was like, the man literally solved a 28-year-old cold case.
Yeah, that had gone completely dead.
Completely dead. He just like finds out about it and goes in and does all the investigation of it. And my best friend Olivia was a podcaster. And so she had him on her show.
Oh.
And they were talking because me and her listened to it. We're obsessed with Up and Vanished. And so listening to like his behind the scenes stuff. And she asked him one time, she was like, were you ever afraid when you were doing this? And he was like, season 1, I definitely thought I was going to get killed too.
Wow.
I wondered that. I was actually scared.
And I was
would be like in Georgia. And he's so attractive. And I was like, Olivia, date him. Please. Yeah.
Please. Payne Lindsay, if you're listening,
yeah.
ask Olivia Caridi out.
Yeah.
She lives in New York.
See it.
I was like, she lives in New York now.
He's in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, I think he's in Atlanta. I think he does a lot with I think he's gotten linked up. His production company works with Tyler Perry Studios or something. Or something like that, Barefoot TV or Barefoot Studios, whatever it was that he made. But he's in Alaska right now doing his next season.
Oof.
Another good one is Helen Gone.
Oh, Helen Gone.
Helen Gone. It is a woman. She was a journalist in New York, but she's from Arkansas, and she goes back home to figure out a cold case in her hometown in Arkansas, and she figures the whole thing out.
That's amazing.
And she's so good. And I just love that she's like this Southern girl from Arkansas in New York. And like, she left a corporate job where she's a bad, corporate bad bitch. And she's like, I'm going home and starting a podcast and doing it. And she's killed it.
Hell yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. So.
Okay. Well, as we wrap, because we're getting a little close to time, I have one final question for you. Okay. What is your definition of, I usually ask a Renaissance man or woman, but I feel like, what would you say?
I think for me, a Renaissance man or woman is somebody that knows what they're great at, knows what they're not great at, and they're able to be honest and truthful about it, and they're able to use their strengths along with their weaknesses to make the world a better place. I know I'm not great at certain things. I know that I'm, excel at other things, but I think it's really somebody that can look at both of those things and know, okay, my gifts are these. I'm not gifted in this area, but I'm going to work hard and seek improvement on those. And try to use these gifts that we've been given to make the world a better place in my own different way. Mine, I guess, is writing a book, and I don't know what's next. So
I love that.
Never thought I would be an author, but here we are.
Here we are. Add that to the old bio.
I know. Crazy.
Where can everyone get Southern Fried Sass?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon, and you can get it in a Kindle version for $15.99. Or you can get the paperback version for $23.99. If you're having trouble finding it on Amazon, because sometimes Amazon likes to hide it. Their search engine
straight for me.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
okay.
It was
For some people it is, and for others it's not. Did you get a copy of your book in the mail yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
But it might be in the mailbox. We haven't checked today.
Okay.
We checked the mail this week?
I haven't checked today.
Okay.
This week,
if it's not in there, let me know. I'm going to have a talk with my intern. I'll have a talk with her today.
I'm sure it's in the mailbox.
I hope so. We've had issues because everything comes to me and then she's sending them out individually to people. But yeah, if you can't find it on Amazon, when you search it, you can always go to the link in my Instagram bio at Patrick Weaver Blog, and it's right there, and it'll take you directly to the book. And if you're a Prime member, you get it in 2 days, which is great. So
It's really great.
I know. So, which is phenomenal. And a lot of people want an audiobook, and now I'm like, I don't know. I wrote the whole thing. Do I want to read it out loud again? I'm like, I feel like I'd get, but now reading the book, the inflection, it would just be phenomenal.
It would be
the way that your whole
it has to come
vernacular.
straight from
I'm a
you.
storyteller by nature. And so that was a fun part for me of the book. Is like, I get to tell a story, and like I do. But I'm like, God, I can't imagine the cotton mouth to sit there and read
Oh,
that.
yeah,
And
that
like,
would be a lot.
and I don't even like listening to my own voice.
Right.
Like I was in show choir and I sang in church choir and all that stuff. I didn't even like hearing myself on recording. Whenever I do episodes of my podcast now, I don't even like to go back and listen to it. Even when I'm like trying to edit it, I'm like, I don't like the way my voice sounds on things. It's weird to me.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like that?
No.
We got over it.
But maybe we did at the
At
beginning.
the beginning, I was definitely like, oh, I sound.
I used to be like that when I'd record video stuff. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, you just kind of learn to live with
kinda
it.
gotta
It's
get-
like,
Yeah.
but then for a while, if you filmed yourself on the selfie camera on an iPhone, it'd flip your face. And it's like, I look so ugly with a flat
Right.
face.
Mm-mm.
But now on the newer ones, you can flip it back.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, I'm vain. I like to see what I look like.
Well,
you know?
yeah.
I'm like, I really wish there was a monitor here, but that's
I
okay.
know.
Next time.
Next time we'll have that.
Next time.
I
We'll
promise.
have a
I'm really
whole TV
embarrassed
for
we
you.
don't have that.
Just pull the flat screen plasma in here and let me look at myself.
Yeah, wheel it in. Just get it in here. All right,
But
Patrick, thank
thank
you so
you.
much for coming on our
Of
show.
course,
You
of
are
Incredible
a
story.
gem.
Thank
Incredible
you.
story.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud of you for sharing it to the world. So
Of course. Thank you all so much for having me.
thank you.